Shout out to the fam. Appreciate y'all being on this episode of the stream. Much love, much love. Appreciate y'all. Shout out to FanDuel, the official sponsor of the show. We up in this thing. Shout out to FanDuel, and please feel free to get your prop bets in at FanDuel. We up in this thing. Hit your like button and the sub button, man. Big Q representing the sports coma, man. And in this episode, we got several topics we're going to talk about. We're going to start it off with this particular topic right now with Bryan Bresee. You guys probably heard recently that Bryan Bresee, the Saints are selecting or actually picking up his option, which is interesting because a lot of people thought that the Saints wouldn't accept an option of a player in his fifth year, which the production doesn't match at $12.99 million. But NOLA.com says they figured out the reason why. But the Saints picked up defensive lineman Bryan Bresee's fifth-year option. A source with knowledge of the situation has confirmed the move ensures that Bresee, the team's 23 first-round pick, will be under contract for the 2027 season. By picking up the option, Saints will pay Bryan Bresee a contract estimated north of $13 million, according to Over the Cap. New Orleans has until May to decide on whether Bresee's status, but officially picked up the option on Wednesday. So a lot of stuff can happen between now and then, but Bresee's 24, had 2.5 sacks last season. That's a 5-sack drop-off from the 7.5 he racked up the year before. But the Saints believe he's played better than his sack numbers indicate. Despite missing 2 games because of an injury, Bryan Bresee played a career-high 69% of the team's defensive snaps. The Saints drafted him 29th overall 3 years ago out of Clemson, and he's entering the 4th season, which he would have been the last year of his rookie scale contract had the Saints not pick up the 5th-year option. That is mostly used for first-round draft picks. So, what does this mean in terms of what the Saints anticipate doing? Is Bryan Bresee's obviously the Saints' best interior force that they have, right? At some point, the Saints will have to figure out some more answers because that's a 2-year agreement with Bryan Bresee. And as you check the unofficial depth chart, it shows you that the Saints they definitely have a need. I guess I could say a need for looking at upgrading a position rather. See, if you look at the interior defensive players here, Divine Gacho is on a 1-year agreement. He got 1 year remaining on this agreement. So they will have to, as we go by one by these players. Check it out. This is Over the Cap for the receipts, and you can see right here in 2026, these are the current contracts for Divine Gacho, who has 1 more year remaining on his contract at $6.4 million. So the Saints have him there, and then a bunch of voided years remain throughout. But this is his final year with the team, right? That's one thing, so the Saints could be possibly looking at that. Then you look at the other interior defensive tackle outside of Bresee is Nate Shepherd. Nate Shepherd really did better in the second half of the year, to be honest with you. He really stepped it up and really performed. But guess what? He's also in the final year of his deal at 14.7. So between the both of them, you're looking at $10 million worth of interior defensive lineman between Nate Shepherd and Divine Gacho. Both of those guys are going into a final year of their agreements, right? And these are 2 players that the Saints heavily rely upon. Now, ultimately, remember John Ridgeway was a guy that the Saints surprised me, and they brought John Ridgeway back. They offered John Ridgeway a 2-year agreement to come back to be the backup lineman for the Saints. And it wasn't an expensive contract, no matter how you slice it. But they like Ridgeway. Remember, we picked up Ridgeway in trade from the Commanders. I think that was a part of the Lattimore deal. We brought him in, but he's a big force, 6'5", about 320 pounds. He has like I said, they just signed him on a 2-year agreement, so he'll be here till 28 when he'll become a free agent. But like I said, the Saints are dealing with that. And then, of course, we know Vernon Brockton's listed as an end. We know more than likely the Saints are moving around. He could be a guy that the Saints kick inside. Now he's in the second year of his arrangement. And remember, he got hurt last year, and he's a question mark. 6'5", 311 pounds. We know. Remember the tape on Vernon Brockton. Very violent hands. A guy that gets in the backfield, very difficult to block. And Bo Davis was the main person that was responsible for pushing for the Saints to draft Vernon Brockton. A lot of people thought Brockton would be available in later rounds, like in the fourth round, perhaps. But Bo Davis said, hey, man, we got to grab this guy. So we got him. So he's still an enigma. We know that they can use him inside and out. And he's a third-round pick. So at some point, he would have to justify, his value to the team. But, to be honest with you, if you take a look, of course, we got Christian Boyd. I'm going to take a look at Christian Boyd. But Bryan Bresee right here, he's a guy with the first-round grade. He's been a guy he's got during his time here in his career. Bryan Bresee, whether you look at it or not, he's been incredibly active. Bryan Bresee has 14 and a half sacks in 3 years since he's been here. 14 and a half for an interior defensive tackle. Remember, he had 7.5 in 2024 and 4.5 in 23 and 2.5 last year in 15 games, right? So 14 and a half sacks for the young Bryan Bresee, and they're picking up the option on that. Now, like I said, man, I didn't think the Saints would pick up the option, but the reality is the Saints could definitely use some more help from that position, to be honest with you. And, and we talked about Mickey Loomis's draft philosophy, but it's a very well-known fact that Mickey Loomis believes in drafting a year ahead of a need. That is his philosophy. It's a well-known fact that he actually believes in that philosophy. Let me show you guys the other interior defensive tackles as well. This is Christian Boyd. Y'all remember him, the 6th-round draft pick back in 2024 that we have here as well. He's 6'2", 320 pounds. And he's been here for a while, but seldomly used. Mostly last year was a guy that basically was a reserve lineman, practice squad player. Then when he finally made it to the active roster, he was on game day was deactivated. But it seems like John Ridgway, the veteran, has gained a move on him. But Christian Boyd's still a part of the team. And then, of course, there's other practice squad players. This guy right here, Kozai Ezert, who is another player the Saints picked up for the practice squad, 6'3", 305 defensive tackle. But nonetheless, these are all your interior forces that we talked about here, that we brought here, that will more than likely be used on from internal or defensive standpoint. So Divine Gacho, Nate Shepard, John Ridgway, Christian Boyd, those are some of the guys internally. Could you see a need here? Could you possibly see a need where the Saints could draft somebody here? And that's what I'm hitting at. I think that is definitely a situation where the Saints could add some kind of talented player right there, to be honest with you. But Bryan Bresee is obviously the number one of the future players that they have outside of what we're looking at. Shepard and Divine Gacho gone after this season. The Saints get real young. So not knowing what Vernon Brockton is, having Christian Boyd here, getting John Ridgway back on a 2-year deal, that window, a 2-year window right here, that internal defensive line looks a lot different, and we'll see what the major plan is in terms of having Bryan Bresee. But man, in the end, this could be something to watch. And I've been warning people about the Saints possibly having a issue there from the internal line standpoint, which could point to the Saints making, a move in the draft a lot higher than you would anticipate. I'm not saying they're going to take a defensive lineman with the internal defensive lineman with the first pick, but at some point, if Mickey's strategy is to draft ahead of a need, at some point, whether it's rounds 2 or 3, you can look at them probably taking a defensive lineman somewhere along in there to deal with what they're going to do. Like I said, Bryan Bresee and both Nate Shepard on 1-year deals. We just signed Ridgway on the 2-year deal, and not much outside of that behind Bryan Bresee picking up his option. So, y'all let me know in the comment section how y'all feel about Bryan Bresee and the Saints picking up that 5th-year option, getting ready to pay Bryan Bresee, 12.999. I think it's indicated the actual number is, but it could be 13 million for your first round internal defensive tackle. And Bresee's good enough where he can kick outside, man. He kind of is a tweener type in terms of the lineman, like to have 14 and a half sacks in 3 years. That's not bad for an internal defensive tackle who does have his speed and stuff. He does have the ability and has been used. Well, sometimes you kick him outside and could use him to rush and all this kind of stuff. So Saints like they defensive linemen to be guys that are versatile. Might be the case why they see Bryan Bresee. We'll see what the plan is on them, but they pick up that option for the 5th year at 12.99 mil.
Who that say they gonna beat them Saints? Who that? Who that? Who that say they gonna beat them Saints? Who that? Who that? Who that say they gonna beat them Saints? Who that? Who that?
Hey, New Orleans! Whether you're catching up on Saints news at Jackson Square, checking Pelicans scores in the Garden District, or staying updated on LSU while grabbing coffee in the French Quarter, there's one place that keeps you connected to everything that matters in our city. From Bourbon Street to the Superdome, from Preservation Hall to the Riverfront, New Orleanians are staying in the know with thehootitdaily.com. Your daily source for Saints, Pelicans, LSU, and all the sports, music, and culture that makes our city special. At work downtown, at a game in the Dome, or just relaxing by the Mississippi, wherever life takes you in the Big Easy, you can stay connected. Because when you're from New Orleans, you don't just live here. You stay in the NO. That's stay in the know. Visit thehootdatdaily.com and never miss what matters most to Who Dat Nation. Stay in the NO, you stay in the know.
Welcome to the Pro Shop, where we create authentic NOLA-inspired clothing for men, women, and children. From Saints jerseys to Pelicans gear, everything's crafted right here in New Orleans. Whether you're shopping the Pro Shop, the Pel Shop, or the Pro Shop Kids, we've got your whole family covered with genuine merchandise that represents our city's spirit. Check for links in the description section below or in the chat.